full transparency. I'm recording the session starting right now, but feel free to use the chat and all that as we go. So today we're doing the second half of module 2, which is focusing primarily on sponsorships and event marketing. So for a lot of the content that we're covering in this course, these two areas are the core of it. Of course, budgeting is important. Of course, the element of the pitch is important. Of course, staffing is important. But in a business curriculum, in sport management, and in marketing, these two are the core in terms of what we're building off of for revenue generation. So start off with sponsorship. Sponsorship is a unique arrangement that organizations have with each other, and it's basically signing on to that direct affiliation. So some sponsorships can be integrated in a title sponsorship where it's built into the name of the event. You'll see sponsorships on jerseys of basketball teams, jerseys of soccer teams, surrounding events. You'll see banners, you'll see signage, promotions. Layers and layers and layers and layers and layers of sponsorship are really in all the events that you participate in. Going back to the poll we had this week, it looked like ticket fees, registration, stuff like that is a big portion of revenue. But one thing that I can't emphasize enough, sponsorships have to be there. Because as you'll find out, sponsorships are really the true source of revenue for many organizations in the event and sporting space. So with this, you'll see a lot of affiliations based on the interest of consumers pairing with the sport. So when you think about sports like NASCAR, you do see a mix of alcohol distribution or alcohol producers, distribution companies. You'll see a lot of groups in terms of like the consumption of the food and beverage industry, organizations like McDonald's, Jimmy John's being involved in that space. While you look at baseball, you see some similar brands there. When you look locally, you'll see more community-based organizations supporting and contributing to events. So there's really different scales, but it comes down on the local scale to geography and proximity to the businesses, as well as correlation for what the event is and how it aligns with the company's goals. And on the greater scale, we're thinking more big brand firepower on how sponsors can be viewed outside of the event itself, but also accessible within, such as product distribution rights of Coca-Cola being like an exclusive beverage partner for an organization. With this too, one of the key areas to look at as a sponsor. So in this section, we're going to look both from the angles as a sponsor as well as a business, but it's important to understand what the return on investment or return on opportunity is and how that is valued. Every organization looks at that differently. Some organizations look at that on direct revenue. Some of them look at access to emails or participants. Some have other factors from there, but it's a key metric that you have to sell and cater to as you build these relationships with companies. So it's overall sponsorship is a mix on the two sides of show me the money and show me your audience. So as a festival planner, I need the money to operate. So as we build events, that is the core funding to put the event on. And then everything beyond that is really complementary revenues. So I know we have to spend X amount, whatever has to be spent for many small festivals should be covered in sponsorships with a little access on the revenue and from that. And then stuff like tickets and registration or tickets, donors, all that is more of that complemental guaranteed free money at the end of the day. From the business side, when they're engaging, they're going to want to know why. What's the benefit? What's the value? How am I going to be viewed? How am I going to be seen in this space? So for your projects that you're working on, make sure that when you're identifying sponsors, they do, there is an understanding of how they're benefiting from this, how you're going to engage them, compared to just saying, all right, here's 5 big companies in town, they're going to give us money. we're going to have to do a little bit more research to see what those organizations are spending their money on, just to make sure that actually syncs and is a reality at the end of the day. With this too, there's a terminology called integrated marketing communications. With sponsorships, this falls in that integrated mix and goes beyond the layers of traditional marketing. So integrated marketing is when businesses are using a diverse collection of channels to connect with potential consumers. So it's the use of social media, it's the use of engaging with sponsors, it's the use of billboards, posters, connecting via podcast. Those are all different forms there. So when you think about a sponsor isn't just a vessel of marketing, but it's also traditionally a component that needs to be recognized in your other medias. So compared to them just writing a check and then you slapping their sticker on a billboard, in traditional sponsor relationships, there's more layers to that to guarantee satisfaction on the sponsor side and enhance their touch points and visibility. And visibility is a key thing to showcase when you're building these relationships. So within this strategy of integrated marketing and sponsorship development that you're working on, there's basically 6 tiers that you're building as an event manager or as a marketer. The first level is awareness. So all brands, whether you are the event host or the business looking to get connected with the community, you got to generate that awareness, got to get that visibility out there. Once you are out there, or once you're creating that social media page, that website, whatever, it's then about the educational process and sharing knowledge. So you got to start to build up a rapport with the community, get some buy-in, which leads to people getting connected and forming that affiliation with your organization, product, service, whatever it is. From there, once they understand who you are, they gotta, that's key, but you want them to become advocates for you. So compared to looking at competitors, compared to looking at other entertainment destinations, other venues inside or outside of town, we got to build the rapport so they understand why you are the destination or the event of choice compared to just being an option. Once you do that, as in the marketing strategy, then you can start to build your own little army of warriors and ambassadors as well. So if you have a very engaged audience, they're going to be sharing the content. If you have strong sponsorship relationships with your partners, they're going to be promoting this as well beyond what you're going to do internally in terms of sharing awareness. Lastly, that leads to the purchase. So you want to first off educate, get the information out there, got to build rapport, and then that should lead to some transaction at the end, whether it's buy-in from a sponsor, ticket sales, or whatever you're looking to do to generate revenues. So when it comes to those different components of sponsorship, there's really 2 different angles to go, both very applicable for your individual projects. First is the obvious one, and that's monetary support. You got to pay the bills somehow. So asking for sponsors for money, figuring out the value add there on both ends. Money has to happen to put on events. Second is in kind. So if you think back to your experiences, whether it was in Little League or at a silent auction or a fundraiser for your school or whatever it was, in kind is a powerful layer just to get some affordable product on the table for many small scale events. This is where an organization could, contribute a small amount of money for a certain thing. They could provide a meal, they could do whatever it is, compared to going down other accounting streams to have more of a direct check payment. So if you're thinking about if you're putting on an event, well, you all are putting on your events for your individual project. There are some organizations that's like for Polly's Country Market in town or Meijer, they might be more on the side for a small event of actually providing a gift certificate to cover food compared to actually giving you a check and being listed for $1,000 contribution. So each organization goes about it a little differently. For small town businesses, could see a mix of both. For larger corporations, for the type of events we're looking at, more the monetary side is the realistic outcome. When it comes to the proposal, every sponsor is looking for something different. And when you're reaching out and pitching to companies, you got to think about what their goals are. How does their target audience align with your target audience? What's the benefit of this whole thing compared to just writing a check? How am I benefiting from being involved with this event? What are the core details? So something I wanted to show in the next slide is, an example of a sponsorship template and how to kind of showcase these different areas. So we have a lot of sponsorships also have different levels. So if you think about like a golf scramble might have an overarching presenting sponsor, which is the next one where we talk about naming rights. It could be the whatever golf scramble hosted by Consumers Energy. Or for most different areas involving sponsorships, there's different tiers and different levels. At that same scramble, there are whole sponsors. There are beverage cart sponsors. There might be a reception sponsor, covering the costs at the beginning and the end of the event. There might be some silent auction items available. So think about the different tiers of what can generate revenue in different ways in your sponsorship levels. And when it comes to larger scale events compared to anything that we're planning in this course, that's really amplified in different levels based on. Seriously, no one's here, dog. What's the problem? So based on those different levels, when you think about Comerica Park or the Pistons and Wings, I want you to dig deeper to think, what are they getting in addition to getting their name in this location as part of that greater package? What's the value of being affiliated with having your name on the billboard? What's the value of having that promotional giveaway of bobbleheads at the door? Everything has a cost, and those sponsorship packages are basically what provides those opportunities for both fans and companies. And that's where the cost certainly varies. So speaking to an event that I know well, for the Gus Macker tournament, and just to be very transparent, this is how we fund the entire event outside of like player fees. It's the different sponsorship levels. So when you think about how you're presenting this information, think about different access points. So in this example, we have different tiers, we have different levels. On the very first side of the sponsorship program, we want the company to understand exactly what they are getting in general for these certain levels with their spend. Are they going to be incorporated on specific marketing materials? Are they going to be on a flyer? Are they going to get visibility in a newspaper publication? Are they going to get PA announcements? Are they going to be highlighted on social media? So compared to say, yeah, all sponsors get recognized, we got to be specific on what the variation is from 250 compared to 6,000. Seriously, Murphy, please stop. Then on the next side, what in all organizations and festivals and major events, there's a transactional item. So if you say, oh yeah, we have these 6 different levels available, and you're going to get this branding at each level. No, I want to be attached to something specifically. So at Comerica, the signs behind the backstop, the Pepsi porch, the special clubs that they have there, whatever it is, each item has a sales price and falls into different categories. So in the example with Gus Macker, even though you get all these different things at these specific levels, you also are attached to an a la carte item that you are the key partner for. So going back to the last slide when we talked about that presenting sponsor, that's where we, and for many events, have that integration in the logo in all event marketing. But there's also specifics for a hot dog contest presented by the Junkyard Dog, or the Lammer's Heating and Cooling Stage, or the whoever 2K esport tournament. With these different things, if we want to put this on, the bill has to be paid before we put it on. So that's where sponsors come in to basically determine if it's going to happen or not. And then that's where those fees or other, oh my goodness, 1 second. Murphy, can you please leave this room? So that's where all these, costs are covered on the front end, but it also, in addition to you as an event manager having different layers to capitalize on, it provides totally different access points for the businesses you're working with. So while $6,000 might be a lot for a small retail store, and that might kind of scare them away from the whole thing, they might also identify the benefit of being involved at the 250 level. So having these different tiers provides different opportunities for you as an event manager, but it also provides more possibilities when it comes to nonprofits or smaller companies, or really businesses of all sizes that are looking to engage with the event. So thinking about, just those rates in itself, the smallest level is basically 1/20th of the revenue as a top level, but everything does have a science and purpose behind it to pay the bills that way. Thinking about added benefits of sponsorship, with when it comes to a company attaching themselves with your event, they're looking to engage with the audience. They might be looking for database information. For example, a couple years ago at the Art, Beer, and Wine Festival, we partnered with Michigan International Speedway, and if you wanted to get a festival guide and enter to win I believe we gave away like a bike or something, to get that, you had to complete this form. So that way, Michigan International Speedway got a larger mailing list compared to if they would have just had a booth at a promotional table. So with that, getting database information was key, because then they could engage directly with that target market or the greater audience participating. I already talked about logo integration, but also merchandise. So is there a way that the brand could be incorporated on different giveaways, whether it's a program or clothing, different apparel? You see more of that on the larger event scale compared to the small events that we're working with in this class. But if you're hosting a concert, a festival, or even a 5K, a basketball tournament, how are the companies going to be recognized on the swag and in revenue generating items? Printed materials, talk about that. Then added benefits overall, could be naming rights. So we kind of talked about the exclusivity with those certain things for Gus Macker. Or if you look at the example with the cinema series that was in Chevrolet Plaza, you see two different layers there. So Chevrolet Plaza, they are the sponsor for this specific location within the greater Little Caesars Arena complex. So seeing staggered branding even within singular events, getting association and recognition out there. Also, could provide additional strategies to connect with an audience beyond simply just giving money and being involved and supporting that way. Thinking about that, like the promotional activity, that's a tier of activation. So what are you doing to engage the sponsorship? Are they going to have a special reception? Are there going to be giveaways? The activation is basically the exchange or specialized activity itself that starts to get the brand out there and connected with the population. Cross promotions are another area that come into sponsorships. We talked about this briefly, but if we're working with a sponsor, for example, if you're working with Eaton, a large company in the Jackson area that has a national presence, maybe part of this deal is, I want, for your local chapter, I want you to promote that internally in your internal newsletter at the aerospace facility. In addition, we're going to be sharing content about you online. So what are those beneficial opportunities compared to just receiving a one-way exchange of getting the money? How can they serve as advocates to promote the event or the business as well? Another and more emerging area of activations is the area of cause-related marketing. So, and one of the big things I think about is, when you think about athletes, when you think about some major events like the NBA All-Star Game, an example this year, what are they doing to generate awareness for a specific cause? What are they, it might not be directly for the organization they represent, but it could be a way to, educate a broader audience, raise money, generate funds for something bigger than the narrow vision of what they're representing or participating in. So cause-related marketing is a different factor to think about. It's very influencer driven in terms of the voices that we see out there. It could be local influencers, could be celebrities, but that's something to think about. And then with evaluation, end of the day, how are you validating the value? How are you validating the value of this whole thing? Are you seeing a return on sales during the event? After the event, are you putting together a larger contract that you can track over time? Are you gaining access to participant information? That everyone's going to look at it a different way. So you got to think as an event manager, what you can guarantee on your side you can showcase is, hey, I know there was 6,000 guests. I know 4,500 were on this side of the grounds. I knew this many were involved in sales of your product on site, blah, blah, blah. But what are they doing on the back end to really track those revenues? Is there a mechanism that says, how did you learn about us? Did you find out about this at this event? Was there a direct conversion on site to connect people in the process? That's where you as an event manager and they as a sponsor and partner business will have different mechanisms to do this reporting, but both are critical to determine the value. Saw a question for Brendan. So do businesses pay NBA teams to wear their logo on their uniforms? Absolutely. So I forget how I should have brought that up for this slide. I'll get that information by the next meeting. I'll share you some of the figures that we've seen out there, but that's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars that it would be to get Flagstar right on the corner of a jersey. Like for the Pistons, if you think about the Red Wings, right on the helmet now, they have the UWM, United Wholesale Mortgage. That is a direct sponsorship transaction. So when you think it's going to be very interesting. You see the logos on courts, you see the logos on scrolling marquees, you see the logo on the billboard, you see the logos of different sponsorships everywhere around the arena. Think about the past 2 years and the impact of COVID. Organizations are grasping for air in many cases. So once they identify something that can be sold, just wait to see logos continue to emerge. Another example, the Red Wings, they have multiple logos on the ice. They have multiple banners basically every 5 feet around the ice. So when you think about jerseys, helmets, accessories, pants, whatever it is, you're going to see more integration on on those activations as we continue to grow. Great question, Brendan. And I'll get that answer just to kind of show you the price range we're working with. But, to be Wish, I think Wish is on the Lakers jersey. That bill is astronomical compared to what Flagstar is able to access as more of a local bank that gets the Pistons. So even in like the same league, the same area, it is apples and oranges based on the markets that organizations are working with, which is why an event in Jackson will be a heck of a lot cheaper to put on compared to Detroit, just based on the market. So I'm going to take a 15-second breather, but if you have any questions similar to what Brendan shared in the chat or specifics on anything, feel free to type those in. Otherwise, 10 seconds, I'll hop into chapter 6. All right, doesn't look like anyone's typing. We'll go from there. All right, now for sport marketing as a whole, the one big thing you have to think about as an event manager and as a marketer is what is that affiliation you're working with? A lot of fans of sport are pretty hardcore. They're very interested in very specific reasons. It could be that they're, a native of the city. It could be they're a huge basketball fan. It could be their favorite players on the team. Sports fans are a pretty avid animal to connect with. So when you see affiliations in the sporting event arena, it's a pretty fluid street to get connected once you start affiliating with brands that have such a strong rapport to begin with. So with that, we got to think about what we can do as marketers to connect that image and engage with the fans beyond just the singular element of going to a game or buying a ticket. What can we do to build that rapport leading into the event and throughout the year? So one big thing we have to do, no matter what scale your event or institution that you work for is we got to establish a marketing plan. In your individual project, I didn't necessarily ask for a marketing plan, but in the upcoming section, you're kind of doing it, but not in a as robust scale as you would if you were actually putting the event on itself, because that could be an entire report in itself. But with that marketing plan that you put together as an event manager, there are some key criteria that should go into it. First off, what are the facts? What's the data? What's the volume we're looking at? Let's get what we know on paper and use that to form the goals and objectives we're working towards. We also, with that, and you've already kind of done this, is start to identify those target markets. What do we need to do to connect directly with that market, understanding the 4 Ps of marketing, which are product, price, promotion, and place, to get the information out there and to build those affiliations. Through that, once we understand these different tactics, some might be online, some might be guerrilla based, some might be in-person marketing components. How are we feasibly going to implement it? So with that, at the end of the day, we have to be able to go back and see what was effective and what wasn't when it comes from event to event to event, for an institution throughout the year. So the first stage with that is the research component. What do we know? And this is, if you look at this is kind of like that SWOT analysis that we already discussed. So a SWOT starts putting the wheels in motion when you think of yourself as a business or as an entity. When you break it down even further, let's really crack it open for for a specific event at least. What is so unique about it? Like, truly, beyond this being a strength of mine and this being an opportunity, let's go one more layer of impact and say, why is this a must-attend opportunity? Based on some of those opportunities out there or resources that you have, what things in the area, what factors do you have in terms of technology, resources, built-in connections with consumers that can grow that to the next level? When thinking about how you're going to do that, we also have to have a significant pulse on the potential customers. We define that target market, but what do they want? If we say this is something for families of all ages, what does that even mean? What's a price point for a family of 4 compared to a family of 8? So when thinking about hosting a large, if you're targeting families of all ages or all sizes to an event at Ford Field, the way you would market them to a children's challenge type of event is very different than getting tickets for a Lions game. All this has to be factored in to the equation. With that too, what are the goals and objectives? Especially in your projects, we got to be talking about this throughout. We got to go back. Why are we doing this? How are we going to accomplish these different goals we have set forth? What are we going to do to generate awareness? That's when the marketing really comes into play. What's the realistic outcome of this based on the resources we have, and how do we need to adjust? And doing that, it really comes down to the consumer. So in all different realms of marketing, the consumer is the ultimate concern. So you as a business may have done things a certain way. You of an event, having a specific event might have, obviously direct goals you want to accomplish. But at the end of the day, if we're not serving the needs and engaging the consumer, you're not going to succeed as a marketing and event management professional. So when evaluating that, it's good to get a pulse on that audience. What are they really driving for? Are they looking to connect with people? Are they looking for a unique atmosphere? If it's like a larger scale, does the team matter? So if you think about the Lansing Lugnuts, why do people go to Lugnuts games? It's not like there's a $20 million player on the field. It's a mix of a unique experience in the central part of the state, something to do with family on Thursdays if you're a college student, 21 or older, something you could do, grab a cheap beer at the park with friends, get out of the house, especially now during like COVID times. Think about really what brings all these different dynamics to a venue like that. And for other festivals, like why does this event succeed? Why does this team succeed in this region while they might not in another? You look at Grand Rapids. The Grand Rapids Drive lost a contract to the Pistons, and the Pistons are bringing a new, I think, G League team, D League, one of the two, some letter league teams to downtown Detroit. Well, the location of the Drive sucked. It wasn't downtown. It wasn't in a destination people wanted to, pregame around and hang out afterwards. While if you're in downtown Detroit, well, that's better access for the fans. That's a better experience for the fans, better experience for the players. So it's interesting how, organizations look at that and, determine how they're going to connect with fans in more effective ways. And for that example, the Pistons just moved a freaking team, which is kind of cool. They sold it, or they didn't even sell a team. They got rid of a team and got a contract with another team. So, going back to that motivation, and some of and we also got to think about constraints. What's prohibiting people from attending? Price is an obvious one. Price, economic factors. What can we do as event managers to bridge that gap to provide access to everyone who wants to be engaged? That's a tricky formula to figure out. Thinking about COVID, I mean, that's a huge issue for anyone that's tried to put together even a small scale parking lot tailgate since last March. So how is COVID going to, at least for the next 5 years, change the way that people approach events? Come 2022, are people going to be cool sitting arm to arm in an arena together without masks? I have no freaking idea, right? So that's all, as event planners, the unknown is just this fascinating thing we're all trying to figure out together. And COVID could have a very significant impact on the way facility managers, directors, and marketers do their jobs and put together a product and have these kind of events. To the next layer, and this goes to the target markets, comes the market segments. Now, speaking to your individual project, the demographic and psychographic segmentation, even if I don't spell it out on the rubric, we absolutely have to hit on these. So I know in some papers, it's like, we want to work with high school students. What does that mean? Is it high school athletes from the Jackson County area, from the Cascades Conference and the Big Eight, or whatever the different conferences are? We got to be very defined on what we're looking for with their backgrounds, maybe with their personality, what they value. I know one of the presentations in the class is looking to do more of this all-star camp that could create an access point for skilled athletes to connect in the recruiting forum with teams. Awesome. So how do we identify, the values of those people, even if they're from beyond the community? Very important factors to determine when you're, identifying how far people are willing to travel for an event that you would put on. How are people going to utilize the event? What's the ultimate benefit at the end of the day from this? So when it comes down to it, your markets have to be specific. They have to be narrowed down. one of the biggest issues. If a target market's too broad, all ages, even, high school students only, or all women, we have to realistically filter that down, because the way a 21-year-old female utilizes social media to gather information compared to a 16-year-old compared to a retiree, we're talking completely different marketing messages, completely different marketing channels and streams, which is where that marketing segmentation comes to play with, or to properly engage those target markets. With that, we got to think about the foundational items that are going to put the event on. So how are we branding it? What is that unique identifier? Is it a logo? Is it a slogan? What makes your event, your business, your whatever it is, stand out from the rest? That's something we all need to identify early on. And if that's a hard thing to identify, like what makes us so special, that's going to be a hard freaking thing to sell. So that's where, the branding element is really the absolute core of a marketing strategy, but also kind of the core of a business plan and marketing plan. Because if you don't stick to that mission, if you don't stick to that value, it's just going to be confusing for the consumer on the other side. For pricing, is there mixed pricing strategies for events? So some activities you go to, like a MHSAA sporting event, many instances there's one price point, $6 to go to a regional game, or $10, whatever the cost is. There could be other events that have group pricing. So if you buy 10 plus tickets, you receive a discount. Or thinking about Michigan International Speedway, the cost for suites is different than the field, is different from this section or that section. And that's kind of the traditional ways that you think about tickets for events, is these variable amounts to balance, the financials that you need, but also to provide access points for really all demographics that you're looking to connect with. And with that too, how much are you willing to pay to be involved with something? So the cost of a 5K versus the cost of Michigan playing Rutgers versus the cost of Michigan playing Ohio State. Those are, the university could host all those events, but those are insanely different things to identify price points for, based on the greater value that fans attach themselves with around it. Then distribution, how are, these tickets getting in front of people, whether it's online or a site like Ticketmaster, stuff like that. For promotions, how are you connecting? How are you engaging with the audience? So think about the different areas, whether it's social, billboards, those integrated marketing forums, on what you're going to do to get the name and brand out there. Website marketing is also imperative, because if there's anything that requires a transaction or an ability for you to grab the email of the consumer, sign up for newsletter updates, sign up for emails, having an established website, and of course social media forums to be more interactive with the audience, to have a better pulse of what they're looking for, to build that like and fan base. Websites and social media, kind of preaching to the choir on this one, but those are naturally imperative for many different events. Viral marketing is another concept, especially for those that might have less of a budget to work with. How are you going to get the word to spread? So going back to one of the first slides we had today of, building the recognition and then getting the buy-in, having that word of mouth marketing can be huge for a business to sell tickets, to generate awareness, when the revenues aren't there to spend on marketing. So what is that attractive catch, or not really catch, but what bait are you going to throw out there to engage with the audience, have that following, and ultimately educate more fans in the experience? Advertising, straightforward. The definition of advertising is more of those traditional models compared to integrated marketing. Everything we're talking about is integrated marketing communications. Traditional advertising is more of that radio, billboard, newspaper, traditional forms. all are applicable for the different types of events that everyone on the call is working with. But also the cost of doing a TV commercial in the Jackson market might not be attainable if you're working with an operating budget of $20,000. A billboard that costs $1,200 might not even be attainable. So that's where we have to evaluate all these different channels to figure out what the cost is, what that return on investment is, and what's best for us to connect with the different audiences we're looking to engage with. For sales promotion, it's basically promotions are a mix of techniques that are more discount driven in nature. So it could be coupons, it could be samples. So maybe your sponsors have a promotional booth at an event so they can connect, do some give away some trinkets to the public. So with that, promotions can happen both as an event manager and marketer, as well as sponsors and outside businesses. And at the end of the day, we got to generate the sales. So are there other methods you could do for direct selling, for personal email communications, from newsletters, getting something called volunteer sales? So, hey, if you recommend someone for this event, you save X amount %. So if anyone has like a Peloton or Fight Camp or other training mechanism like that, if you refer a friend, you get 2 months free on your membership fees. That's that volunteer sales and that incentive that you see in a lot of different sport marketing arenas. Lastly, final slide for the day, or final point for the day, is we got to have community engagement. How are we building those partnerships? How are our partners spreading the message that we want them to spread? What's that collaboration look like with some of those entities from the convention visitors bureaus to the Chamber of Commerce? Are they helping you get connected in the appropriate way? Are you even engaging with those groups? Those organizations are there to help event planners regardless the scale of your event or employer. Lastly, advisory boards, another great influence on marketing. The more people you work with, the more mixed mindsets there could be, but ultimately the more power and connections there could be when it comes to launching events and generating awareness. Now, I don't think I breathed for the past 40 minutes, but I'm going to stop the presentation, open it up to questions, whether it's specific on the class or specific on the presentation, specific on the class. Just let me know. Whoa, what just happened there? That's crazy.